concluding look at Spinoza's philosophy. Reasoned emotion, which gets us into his ethics, which is, after all, the title of the entire major work, even though it takes him quite a while to get to it, and leads us towards what obviously is involved in terms of religious implications of his pantheistic philosophy. So let's refresh our minds, first of all, on the premises that he is bringing to the discussion. And I hope that by now you have these pretty clearly in mind. The first, of course, is his double aspect monism. There is one all-inclusive being, substance, with at least two attributes, two that we know of. Thought seems to imply conscious organization, and extension, that is to say, material existence. So he understands the materiality of this one being in terms of the mechanistic science of the day. In that sense, he's a materialist. And he seems to be thinking of this, this conscious, intelligible organization in some way parallel to the Stoic logos, which Philo of Alexandria had tied into Judaism, and later Christian thinkers worked on. So that you have in the totality of reality these two aspects, these two sides of it, as the Stoics had thought. There's the material stuff, basic material, elemental stuff, and there's the logos structure, the ordinateness of it, which gives it the kind of structured universe that it is. Call it nature, call it God, it's one and the same thing. And at the finite level, that means, of course, that all of what there is about all of us are simply finite moments. Finite modes is the way he puts it. Finite moments in the being of the all-inclusive one. So that your present thoughts are God's clear and distinct thought, not necessarily as clear and distinct in your thinking. And your present bodily condition, bodily processes, are obviously a finite aspect of the overall physical cosmos. So this double aspect applies at both the infinite all-inclusive level and the finite particular level.
I have a problem with understanding the modes. If he
Yeah.
defines modes at the beginning as changing or altering the substance,
Yeah.
does that mean it's changing from infinite to finite or something?
No.
He describes a finite.
Yeah. He speaks of modes as if they are some sort of modification, you see, as if it's some change, as you put it, taking place in the one. Does the all-inclusive one itself change? No. No, in this sense, that it is unchangingly the all-inclusive. Now, if it is all-inclusive, then there is nothing it can change into, because it includes all possibilities. What change there is takes place in the finite modes which come and go within the all-inclusive. So that your yesterday thoughts and your today thoughts are modifications, because they come and go, within the overall timeless thought, all-inclusive, you see. And your bodily changes of position, your hair falling out, these are modifications at the finite level, whereas the all-inclusive embraces the whole lot. So you can't say that God, the one, is changing. No, unchangingly, one. But the changes take place in the finite processes, and it's only there the change occurs.
Well, we talked last time about error. Does that mean that when we're in error, that error is inclusive in God?
Yeah, well, pick it up in terms of good and evil. Is evil within God? Is error within God? Well, we saw last time that for Spinoza, good and evil are both confused ideas. They're not clear and distinct ideas. They're imaginative ideas that we come up with. There is no objective correlate, no objective point of reference for what we call good or evil in reality. Okay? There's no objective reality to good as distinct from evil, and evil is distinct from good. Now, similarly with error. You see, because error arises because of confused ideas, to which we give assent. Assent that we think is a matter of free will, but that too is a confused idea. So everything about error is a matter of intellectual confusion on our part, which does not occur in the case of God. You see, it's only in the finite modes that there are those lacks of clarity and distinctness, those confusions, those imaginations. We have three modes of thought: opinion, imagination, reason. God is only one: clear and distinct understanding, reason. So there's no error in God.
So does that mean that we can think of things that God can't?
Except that when we do, we're not thinking of things. We're not thinking of anything if it doesn't exist, are we? We're having confused ideas. Ideas are passing thoughts. They're not things. There's only one thing, being, substance. That is God. Yeah. So if you have some erroneous idea about some finite things, you are simply fuzzy in your thinking about God. Because any finite thing is a finite mode of God. So your errors are simply your confusion about the one substance, its attributes and modes. Yeah. Ruth?
Not so much as there's, when you discussed how that virtuous action is sort of survival tactic, and that we're determined to act that way because the quality is our life. And he says that it's only by living the right reasons that we can live virtuously. And my question is that, is there a specific, through our reason, we continue to reach the right answers and information about how
Well, it's also Stoic. Because remember that for Stoics, the emphasis was on right reason in the sense of contemplating the order of nature and accepting our place within it. And Spinoza is saying essentially the same. Clear and distinct understanding of the place within nature leads to tranquility, virtue, so forth. But on the other hand, you are right that when he comes to talking in those terms, 4 and 5, it does seem to sound more Platonic than Stoic, you see. And it's that sort of thing which some have traced to the Kabbalistic literature of Judaism. Now, in the history of Jewish thought, you have some Jewish Platonism, as in the case of Philo, some Jewish Aristotelianism, as in the case of Moses Maimonides, and this Kabbalistic literature was closer to the Gnostic tradition. At least that's the way it's usually described. Now, the kind of Gnostic tradition that we ran into was the dualistic sort. But there was also a kind of Gnosticism which had a hierarchy of being. You see, a unilateral hierarchy of being, such as we found in Middle Platonism. They picked it up from the Neo-Pythagoreans, who were influenced by the Gnostics, you see. And it fed over, of course, into Neo-Platonism. And it seems to me that this ingredient, even if it is the influence of the Kabbalistic literature of Judaism, emphasizing love of God, the first and great commandment, the Shema of ancient Israel, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one, and so forth. And blessedness is found in that, love of God. That doesn't keep it from having Platonic influence in that, even within the Kabbalistic tradition. Does that make sense? And, you could look at the overall structure of his thinking, and you remember how I drew this. You could look upon that as sort of a hierarchy of being. Except that, this is where it falls short. There's no emanation out of God to the outside of God. You see, so that finite things are not something other than God that have overflowed from God. No. In Neoplatonism, that's what emanations are. They are the very stuff of God that has overflowed from God. But no, these are modes of God's own being. It's very different. So metaphysically, it seems closer to the Stoic pantheism, though you get some ethical overtones that may be more reminiscent of Plato. Follow? I see some heads nodding, with eyes wide open, alert. Okay, so then one premise has to do with double aspect monism. And since I've already said it in the discussion, another premise has to do with the imaginative, confused ideas of good and evil. Okay? So there is no good as distinct from evil in two separate senses. No. And of course, the other premise has to do with his thoroughgoing determinism, where everything that occurs in God is determined by the very essence of God. And consequently, every finite mode of thought is determined by the causal effect of other modes of thought. Everything that occurs in nature is caused by finite physical events that are caused by, so forth, a thoroughgoing pervasive determinism. We'll see in a moment a little more of this, but somebody asked in the office yesterday, couldn't contain questions about Spinoza, two people couldn't, and just came bursting into the office with questions about Spinoza. One of them was asking, well, what drives this ongoing causal process? You see, what drives the process? Obviously, there is something which must not only start it, but must sustain it. You see. And the answer is, of course, in one way of putting it, the essence of God, which is causal drive. You see. Or, as he puts it in developing his psychology, it's cognitus. Now, that's the Latin word from which we get our psychological term, conative. Conative tendencies are those that have to do with will, and assertiveness, and so forth. Drive. So cognitus is sort of an inner push, an inner pull, an inner drive that runs throughout everything. It's the very nature of being. It's as if it's almost as if he's saying, now, wait a minute, you mechanistic scientists. Is matter that dead? Or is it really a bundle of energy? You see, if that's the sort of thing that's underlying this, he's jumping a couple hundred years ahead of his time. You see. Yeah, is matter dead, inert, acted on only from outside? Which is the mechanistic science view. Or perhaps were the pre-Socratics not so crazy after all when they said that matter is in some sense alive, full of divinity. Remember Thales? Well, Spinoza seems to be thinking in that sort of direction. Next week, when we get into Leibniz, you'll find that Leibniz understands the basic constituents of reality as themselves units of energy. Yeah, he talks of substance, so he's a pluralist, many substances. But every substance is a unit of energy, force. Now, he never heard of E equals mc squared, but he got the idea. It's not bad for 1700. Well, yeah. What do you mean when you say what's the point? Now, what sort of thing is a point?
Well, we talked about how the best thing to do is to, sort of become misaligned so that you have an intellectual level.
Yeah.
It seems like, well, it doesn't matter how you do that, that means determined anyway. So,
yeah. So by a point, are you asking what is the purpose, or isn't he leading to a self-contradictory conclusion? Now, which of the two do you mean, a purpose or a self-contradictory conclusion? So you're trying to argue that Spinoza is self-contradictory. I was hoping it'd go the other way. And ask, if everything's determined, what's the point of trying? You see. His point is, now that's the third sense of point. The point he's trying to make is that, that the fact that everything is determined does not exclude our individual efforts. Because the causal process is the causal process that involves our individual effort, that involves even asking the question, what's the point? Confused idea, though that may be. Because all those things are determined. And so the thought processes we have, debating whether it's contradictory or not, is all part of the process that pushes us on. You see, keep in mind how deterministic are the intellectual processes for you. And you can see things in your own experience that way. You get so involved late one evening in debating with Spinoza that you go to bed and your mind won't rest. It goes on and on and on and on. And you're countering some of his proofs and propositions at 3 o'clock in the morning, wide awake. Does that happen to you? Well, that particular example may not, but that sort of thing happens to many others, I think. Yeah. Let me see, there's a deterministic process. You have control. And even in following through the steps in a deductive proof, you are drawn relentlessly to the logical conclusion. Last night in that lecture about Japanese music, Professor Null got to the point in the lecture when he would sing or on the piano play a few phrases. And then the audience would say, and then the audience spontaneously would come up with the next few phrases. Huh? You know, it's almost like Plato with the slave boy doing mathematical problems. Here was Null with the slave boys and girls doing musical problems. And they seemed to know where it went. Yeah, so you say, what's the point? I can't help myself. You help yourself all the time. Even though you're helping yourself is already determined by other helps you've given yourself along the way, which were determined by. And of course, your thinking process is so determined in certain patterns that I would expect that kind of question from you, David. It's the kind of good question David always asks. So there's a predictability about our thinking. Why? Well, that's the way Spinoza would, I suspect, come out.
Will never asking a question which is predictably stupid or something.
You said that.
The thing that I don't like about, or the thing that really bothers me about the rationalist trend in studying Spinoza, in this case, it seems like they've been locked in a closet for too long or something, because they don't seem to take any account of experience, in the sense that, I mean, they explain it in rational means, but still, on the other hand, it seems like sometimes to me that I just want to shake them and go, well, no, not really. I mean, look at the way it works.
Oh, wait a minute. Experience is opinion. Opinion is confused ideas. That strikes me that's perfectly biblical. We see through a glass darkly. If that isn't a confused idea, what is? Now, you take account of what you see through a glass darkly, but you don't take it as the last word until you see it a little more clearly. You know, the relativity of sense perception is an old story from the beginning of Western philosophy. You're saying, take relative, take it more seriously. Take it seriously as the last word? No, experience alone is never enough. You see, Spinoza would respond that way. Frankly, I would too. And I think even an empiricist would, and say that raw experience is not enough. Because we have to analyze our experience enough in order to sift and organize and draw conclusions. Yeah. Now, underlying your question, of course, is the fact that you don't like a person who's such a rationalist that it's all a priori. Yeah, nor do I. Right now I'm playing devil's advocate. But the fact that you don't like a rationalist who says it's all a priori doesn't mean to say that we ought not to appreciate the fact that at least something is a priori. And experience ain't enough. Deathly silence, as if I murdered the vicar or something. Is empiricism that sacred?
Just to follow that, but it seems that these popular concepts must be able to translate in an experiential way.
Yes. Yeah. All right, what do you find that's not translatable? What in Spinoza is not translatable? It's a very good question. Yours, I mean, not mine. Sounds like some confused ideas.
People are not drawn.
No, according to Spinoza, they're drawn by it.